Greetings everyone, my name is Greg. In this video I am going to talk about people that want to try and claim to use drugs or alcohol to have a spiritual experience and why this is absolute bullshit. I'm also going to be talking about near-death experiences and why they are in large part bullshit. They're not anything of an afterlife. Let me make that clear. And I have a very legitimate reason for why I say that, because, well, for one, I've had that type of experience. But first things first, the aspect of drugs and people that want to try and say about using ayahuasca or marijuana or any drug that alters your mind in order to try and have some kind of spiritual experience. It's meaningless. The moment you introduce a drug that alters your mind in any way, any experience you would have during that time frame can't be trusted. Because how do you know that that experience wasn't induced by the drug or alcohol or combination of the two? So in that regard, you can't make that claim. By the same token, near-death experiences, if you overdose on something, be it a drug, if you overdose on a drug, which in effect that's what I had done twice, 2 days in a row, back, oh my word, it was been like 2009. Yeah, 2008, 2000, it might have been 2008 actually, because I had the battle with the Army halfway through my contract in 2009, so it probably would have been around January or February of 2008. And that came about because I wasn't going to Iraq with my unit because I was having a battle with the Army. And I was having a personal crisis at that time because I wasn't going to Iraq. And I had talked to these, I think it's, the crisis intervention people. And after that experience of talking to them, I had decided I'd never talk to those people again. I don't care what situation I would be in. I would never talk to them. Because when I said I wasn't going to Iraq with my unit, they asked why, and I kind of considered, do I tell them or don't I? Well, because I was having a battle with the Army over the subject of aliens, over my missing time and so forth. And it was one I figured, in a sense, in for a penny, in for a pound. But I had also, prior to that, I had concerns about coming forward with what would be termed my alien abduction story. And after that encounter with the crisis intervention people, the concern in that regard was very much valid. Anybody that thinks or believes they've had an abduction experience, do yourself a favor. Don't talk about it, especially to someone like crisis intervention. Don't do it. For one, they'll put you in a psychiatric ward. But worse than that, at least in my case, they forced a drug on me called Haldol. And shortly after that was introduced to my system, I started to shake. Literally, I just couldn't stop shaking. And I didn't know why. The whole time I was shaking. After I got released, oddly enough, it was on a Friday the 13th. And the ironic part of all of this is in the jacket that I had when I went in, I had a bottle of sleeping pills. and it was still in my jacket when I got released. They never looked. But when I got released, I was still shaking. And right before I got released, now I hadn't caused any problems for any of them. I had talked to sergeants in my unit, and they said I'd be fine and so forth. Don't worry about it. Just basically deal with what you're at the moment. The whole time that I was shaking, I attributed that to not having cigarettes, not being able to smoke. But I had never had that feeling before from nicotine withdrawal. But about a week before I was to be released, the doctor doubled the dose with Haldol. No reason. No explanation given. Just automatically double it. This is another reason I don't trust doctors. I consider them legalized drug dealers. Because a lot of them, they're not interested in getting at what is actually the issue. They're interested in pushing a drug. Especially when they jump to conclusions, especially regarding something like missing time, alien abduction, things of that nature. Oh, you're crazy. Haldol is a drug that is used partially for people that have an issue shaking. And if you don't have the condition that the drug treats, it will give you the condition that it treats. And the day that I was released, prior to being released, the doctor had asked me if I would continue to take this Haldol. I looked, and I'm not one to lie. As a typical rule with me, I refuse to lie. That was the only time I didn't. I had no problem lying. I looked him dead in the face and I said, yep, I'll take it. Knowing full damn well you could shove that prescription up his ass. I was not going to take that bullshit. Especially when I had heard, oh yeah, by the way, Haldol can cause diabetes. I had looked at him at one point. I snapped at him and I said, are you trying to fucking kill me? I have diabetes in my family. My grandfather had it. My dad has it. To try and to give me a drug that can cause diabetes when I have it in my family history. I've been tested since, and I'm not even close to being diabetic, which is kind of ironic given how much soda I drink and how much chocolate and so forth that I'll intake. My sugar count, I live on sugar. But when my girlfriend and I were tested back when I had shingles, I was tested for diabetes and test came up not even close. Not even, and basically they weren't even worried about that. Where my girlfriend came up as borderline. And the thing is, the day that I got released on that Friday the 13th, it was a February, I remember that. And a Friday the 13th of all things. I went over to my sister's. Well, the friend that picked me up brought me a pack of cigarettes. So, and even after smoking, I still had the shakes. So I knew at that moment, it's not the nicotine or the lack thereof. Because my sister had mentioned to me, why are you shaking? And I don't know. I can't stop it. I can't control it. It was the Haldol. Well, I had also gotten some money that day, and I had already decided. I was pretty much released more suicidal than I had been when I went in. Because of the shaking and everything that was just dealing with the doctors and so forth and all of that bullshit, it had me worse than when I went to them in the first place. But that night I had pretty much decided. I got a hotel room, and I had picked up a second bottle of sleeping pills. And it was one, the first night I took about 80. And before falling asleep, I remember I was shaking a lot. And at the time I had thought, okay, I must be having a heart attack. And that night was violent. I had, to use the term, it seemed like a near-death experience because I saw some black figure and I was thrown around the room like a rag doll. And the next morning, when I woke up, my first thought, as soon as my eyes opened and I knew that I was alive, first thought that ran through my mind, fuck, I gotta do it again. That was my first thought. That's the state of mind I was in. Went down, paid for another night, went back up to the room, and I took as many pills as I could swallow. Over 100. And I hadn't been awake long that day. And I passed out. The next thing I remember was getting up to go to the bathroom. And when I went into the bathroom, this is where it gets really freaky. I was very cautious because I remembered the night before being thrown around like a rag doll. The bathroom that I went in, it didn't look like a hotel bathroom. It looked like the bathroom at my sister's, which there was the bathroom door. You would walk in, and back in the corner was the toilet. I walked back into the bathroom. About halfway through, the lights went out. I felt along the wall, found the light switch, turned the lights back on. There's the toilet. Tried it again. About halfway through, the lights went out. I was like, fuck it, I ain't proud. I walked over, and I was like, all right, I found roughly where I felt the toilet should be, because I felt the wall, tried to sit down, went right to the floor. Nothing was there. I felt along the wall, found the light switch, turned the light back on. Everything was where it should be. Walk across, don't even get halfway, and the lights go out. This cat and mouse went on until I got to the point of I turned the lights on, took a step, they went out. Tried it again, they wouldn't even come on. Then I was like, all right, fuck it. And I was making sure to feel along the walls, and it felt like it definitely shrunk because it was no longer a long bathroom, but it basically became a square box. And the whole time, bear in mind, I am a smoker. I'm a pack-a-day smoker. I don't know how long I was in this, which is why I had thought I must have been dead. Because the whole time, in all of this, in all the stress, never had a thought of a cigarette. Not at all. There was one point I had felt, because I wanted to make sure I was feeling walls because I didn't want to be slammed into one again. The thing is, the second day, it wasn't violent. But my frame of mind had shifted. The first night, I was pissed. I was angry at what I had gone through with the hospital shit, the doctors, and all of that. I was very mad. And that is where I suspect that directly influenced what I experienced. The second night, I didn't want anything. I wanted nothingness. And in effect, that's what I got. Because I was in this box type of thing, and I felt myself go to the bathroom, and I was like, all right, fuck it. One of those, I had the thought, okay, maybe now I'm dead type of thing. I don't know. And I had the thought, or I think it was a thought, I don't think anything was speaking, because I did have the idea of if I would be in a hotel room, if I would scream, somebody would hear me, and I would. So I tried that. Not a thing. So it was one of, I figured, I didn't know if basically this was basically an afterlife. I've never been dead before, so I don't know what the fuck in that regard. So I was like, all right, fuck it. I don't know how long I was in that state. But there was one point I felt the wall behind me change, and it felt like a curtain. And I moved, and it seemed like I stepped out of a tub of all things. It was really weird. And I noticed the edge of a door. And I was like, well, fuck this. I found the edge of that door, and initially it didn't want to move. And I was like, oh, like hell you ain't moving. And I pulled to rip it off the hinges, and the door came open, and I was back in the hotel bathroom. And I was like, all right, that's weird. This is really fucking weird. I fully expected to walk around the corner and see my body in the bed. I didn't. I saw the bed looking, both of the beds that were there, they both looked completely messed up. But that was when I realized, oh fuck, I'm still alive. I'm alive. And it was a what the fuck just happened. That was when I felt I need a cigarette. And it was really, the thing was, it was the next day. So I was out for basically damn near 24 hours. I don't know if I was asleep, whatnot, I don't know. But what I do know is what I experienced was directly related to my frame of mind. I don't believe in an afterlife. Not at all. Because my big problem with the idea of an afterlife is there is no evidence that consciousness can exist outside of a living brain. Anyone that wants to try and say that there is an afterlife or a spiritual anything, present me with your evidence that consciousness can exist outside of a living brain. I want to see what it is that leads you to conclude that this is even possible. Because as far as all the evidence that I've ever seen, consciousness is directly linked to the brain. Everything we experience in life comes in and is interpreted and so forth through the brain. If somebody has a head injury and a part of the brain is damaged, their entire personality can change that quick, completely, because of damage to the brain. So why should I or anyone believe that when the brain dies, that there would be some kind of life beyond that. What evidence is there to support that hypothesis? Because that is what it is. It's not a theory, because there is no evidence to validate the hypothesis. The hypothesis can't get out of the gate. And that is the problem with it. Because in order for a God to exist, or an afterlife to exist, or demons or angels or whatnot, they would require consciousness existing without a physical brain. And the idea of soul or spirit, that one is the brain, bullshit. Excuse me. The reason I say bullshit is I've looked up in the Hebrew what a soul is. A soul is nephesh in the Hebrew, and it is a breathing creature that is animal. And it even goes along the lines of what you've probably heard in your life. I haven't seen a soul. No soul's been in here for so many hours. No soul left alive. Not a soul around. Wait a minute. Are we talking Casper? Or are we talking... Or are we talking people? Living, breathing people. And if a person like me is a soul walking into a store, oh, finally I see a soul. Where? I'm not Casper. I'm not a ghost. Whereas the word spirit is ruach, wind, by resemblance, breath. Okay? So I'm a soul and spirit right now. I'm a breathing creature that is animal, and I have wind or breath. So where is the afterlife? Where is the spiritual bullshit? Doesn't exist. These are the terms, and the definitions that I have are from the Hebrew. Don't try feeding me a crock of bullshit of what people have made up since. This is the shit that's in Judaism, that's in the Old Testament, that is the Hebrew. This is what these fucking words mean. There is nothing about it. So to try and say that it is something after you die, I see no evidence of that. Because both a soul and a spirit refer to things that are physical. And the aspect of the brain. Because when a person takes a drug... Oh, and I had mentioned about the sergeant that had said about an explanation, because I was very freaked after this happened. And a sergeant in my unit had said, the drug that you were on, the Haldol, combined with the sleeping pills, what you experienced, yeah, it could have absolutely been caused by the drugs. So and he was religious. And when he mentioned that, I was like, I hadn't thought about that. The ironic as hell part was the next month when I went to my unit, I had to attend a class on, of all things, suicide prevention. I was like, oh, how ironic. I had told sergeants in my unit about what I did, and I went home after my drill weekend it was a Saturday, and I was going in the next day. And when I got there the next day, some of the sergeants in my unit said, we were real close to coming by your house last night, because they were concerned. It was one, I had said to them, I was past that, but they were still concerned. And it's something that I felt, in a sense, I felt it touched, because it showed me that they cared. But the thing is, what it all confirms for me is everything is because of how my brain is interpreting my experiences. Because in life, you can test this and see this to be true for you. Everything that you experience from yourself as center point. That everything that happens in your life is happening from you are here, and it is happening around you. It is all coming in through your eyes. You're seeing the world from this perspective. Everything else, everyone else, no matter how close they are to you, is exterior to you, and you are to them. So if a God would exist, it would be something out there that you would be looking at. But how could this then be something that is, excuse me, in a sense, part of you? Like where it's mentioned in Luke 17:20 and 21, of the kingdom of God comes not by observation, neither shall they say, lo here or lo there, for behold, it's within you. Well, if it's within you, even though a few chapters earlier, this fucking Jesus had said that there were some standing here that won't taste of death till they see the kingdom of God, well, there's a bit of a problem. Which is it? Is it something they're going to see coming, or is it something that's within them? And if it's within you, excuse me, then that means it can't be, excuse me, I gotta wrap this up because these teeth are ready to come out. That's one of the things that happens when my teeth are ready to come out. I start coughing. But if this kingdom of heaven and this God type of shit would be part of every living thing, because I had heard, like the channeler that I had mentioned and so forth, had said about equated God, that type of shit, to the ocean, and that each one of us would be like a drop of water in the ocean, that each drop doesn't make the ocean, but it's a part of. I'm like, okay, I can roll with this. I can understand this. This can put into terms that I can actually grasp. Okay, well, this is what you're fucking talking about. The problem with it is, then you would have a God that is viewing the world, viewing life, viewing itself, viewing everyone, not just from my perspective and your perspective, but from the perspective of billions or trillions at one time. Not fucking possible. Absolutely impossible. The only way that type of analogy could work is if the God is a psychological projection of your own ego. That as a being, it doesn't exist. That it is each person projecting their own ego. That, in a sense, the God type of shit that any person could talk about would be themselves. But if a person is taking drugs or on drugs or Because it doesn't have to necessarily be illegal drugs or recreational drugs. Any drug that alters your mind. It's one, if you are someone that deals with, like, being, schizophrenic or things of that, and you're on medication for that medical condition, and those medications alter your mind, excuse me, the way you're perceiving reality is skewed. But without that drug, your perception of reality is really fucking skewed because you have that defect. So it's one that brings in bigger problems of, does using that drug then give you normal, or can the perception be completely, we can't rely on you because you have this drug in your system that alters how your brain works. But when your brain is on the default setting for you, that default setting is freaking Looney Tune. So how do we jive all of this? And that is where I think the big problem comes in. And it's also, if people are on drugs, it's really something that can definitely change how you're viewing everything, because the drug will be playing hell on your brain and so forth. But feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. And I hope the aspect of, like, the near-death experience, I hope it helps somebody. And overall, I told that because drugs definitely have a big impact on how we perceive reality, and also your mental state. These are reasons why, if there would be a higher consciousness or a God or a spiritual anything, I would want to experience it with a clear mind, calm, and so forth. Otherwise, I couldn't rely on my own perception. But feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Later, people.